In this tutorial in Microsoft Excel, I'd like to show you some more things that you can do with array formulas. We're getting a bit more complicated, so I'm going to slow down and try to show you one step at a time. In the workbook you see on the screen, we're going to look for a name in a large table. The table is in yellow. And we have a formula on the screen to help us to find if the name in the box in cell AB2 is actually found or missing. The formula, which uses an array, is if, and then it uses the or. I'll explain that in a moment. Cell A2, which right now contains the word Jack, is equal to the range A5 to E16. I'll click on it. Will result in a found in cell D2, or it will result in missing in D2. Now first, when I see this formula, I say, why is the or here? Well, let me show you what happens if you leave the or out. I have the formula here without the or. It's exactly what you see above, only it says or, and for some reason it says missing. Because if you don't put the or in, it stops after checking the first cell in the range. So if I put Ray in, now it's found. But I put any other name in besides the first one, it will not find it. But because Scott is in my table, my proper formula says I found it. If I'll put in Gertrude, now Gertrude is missing because it's not in the table. So the or, as you see in the note at the bottom, will return a true result if any of the names match, not simply the first one. So that's why the or is important in the formula. Now, if you have a name that occurs more than once, we'll take Matt over here and turn this to Sam. I know I have two Sams in the table. I'll click and look for Sam. It doesn't tell me which Sam I found, just that there is a Sam in the table. But it's a good way to use an array to find a value in a table. And I can change the found and missing. For example, here I'll say found. I can change the word missing to not found. Oh, here I did a common mistake. When you're editing an array, you don't hit enter. You hit Control-Shift-Enter, and now you return the curly brackets and it works. So if you're working an array and you edit it and hit enter just like I did, very common mistake. So it found Sam, but it didn't tell me how many times. So this is the proper formula to find a value that matches somewhere in a range for an array. Now let's look at another option. This is not matching. This would be a way to count the cells in list 1 and list 2 that aren't perfect matches. Now the two areas, the two ranges have to be the same size. And you notice here I have only two that are different. Now the way I find them is, first of all, I look to compare one and the other. And so here's the final formula. Let me give you the sub-formula. If I just say if A4 to B10, which is my orange, is equal to D4 to E10, which is my turquoise, then the value is 0. If not, the value is 1. And in other words, if there is no match, the value is 1. And this is an array formula. And so if I just did that formula, I entered it here in all these boxes. And this is what it stores in memory in my final formula that you'll see in a moment. So it stores this in memory. So I have a hit here that's different, the cell. As you know, this 5 is not 96. And I have one here, 64 is not 4. Let's add another one just for fun. Let's change the 87 to 78. And now I have 3 hits, 3 cells that are not identical. If I just want the count of the non-identical cells, since the count is a single value, I can put it in a single cell. I take the formula I had up here, and I just add sum in front of it. And I don't tie it to an array, I tie it to a single cell. So it's the sum of, so what in memory it's doing is adding these 3 number 1s. And so that's what the formula here is in cell B13. It's the same as what you see here on the screen. So I take my subformula and then I simply add sum in front of it. And again, I treat it as an array and I get my final number. The array in memory looks like this, but I don't have to use any space on my spreadsheet to store it. All I have to do is put it there and sum it, and the result appears in cell B13. There's a simpler version of the same formula down here, which is the sum is equal to 1 times A4 to B10 not equal to D4 to E10. And so what it does, it multiplies all of these numbers by 1 and sums them. So 1 times 0 is always 0. And this gives me 1 and 1 and 1. And I wind up with the same result. So you can use whichever one works for you best. But it's an easy way to find non-matching cells in 2 identical tables using an array. Let me give you one more. A little more complicated here. Here we're going to try to find the row location of data in a column. And in this case, we're going to actually try to find not any data. We could put a cell in that would give me a number. I'm going to try to find the highest value in this orange list here. And the highest value is obviously my 87. So let's build this formula one step at a time. I start by doing an array that returns the highest value, and that's if, okay, A4 to A10, that's my range. If the cell I'm looking at is equal to the maximum value of A4 to A10, I return the row value of that cell, or I return nothing. And so if I do this, and that's what this array here is all about, this is equal to this formula. If I click on here, that's what you'll see. So I use this to start with. So I'm looking for any cell that is equal to the maximum. And if it is equal to the maximum, it automatically prints the row number. And here I'm in row number 9. So that's my row. So it returns 9. I could also change the formula where I would not get a blank cell. I can edit my formula here. Hopefully I don't goof it up here. And we will change this to just X, letter X. Again, I need to do Control-Shift-Enter. And that filled every cell with an X instead of a number. Otherwise, it fills it with the row number, which here is row number 9. And so if I change my maximum, let's change my maximum. Let's make this 105. Hit Enter. Okay, now the row from my maximum number happens to be row 6. Now, so this is the step that finds the row only. Now I added one other argument to it here. I added minimum in front of it. These two formulas are identical, but minimum will deal with what happens if I have two that tie. It will return the first match. So if I have two identical numbers, it will give me the cell with the first one that fits it. Let's put 105 down here too. And I still had the number 6. So it's the first match that it hits in this formula. Now let's add a little bit to it as we grow in our knowledge. Let's say I want not only to know the row of the highest number. We'll put this back down to ease confusion here. But I also want to know the column. Well, if I want to know the column, I'll have to add to my formula. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we add this column formula here. Column A4 to A10, I'm just using the simple formula here, is equal to 1. It's in the first column of my spreadsheet. So when you add column in as an argument, it will return the first, or the number of the column, not the letter of the column, but the first one. So if I had to do, for example, let's do on the fly, column, let's just say D2, make it a single reference. D2 is in the fourth column. So that's what the column argument does for you. I'll delete that. So we're going to add that in the formula below, but I want you to understand it. A third thing we have to add that you see in the final formula is address. Address displays the row and the column. The address of 91 starts out with the row and number and the column number. It's not A9, it's 91. So I go to the 9th row, the first column if I were numbering them, and that would give me A9. So it returns the numeric coordinates to your normal coordinates, like A9 in the row and column number is equal to 9, 1. So that converts it, because right now we're looking at the formula to return this. So let's show you how that works here. We add them all together. We've got the same formula we had here as the guts of our final formula, and it's an array formula. So that's from min all the way down to here. But now we're going to use the address. This right now resolves to 6. And then we add the column part of the address. That resolves to A. Okay, it turns that into an A. And so this is how that worked when I had the number back where we started with, and when the highest one was 9. It doesn't work right now doesn't compare right now with the numbers that you see when I put another number and a higher number in somewhere else, but now it matches again. So the formula here is the address, which converts my 91 into A9, and it got it because this value here resulted in the number 9, and this value here resulted in the number 1. So now I was able to use the array formula to return the actual address with column first, row second, of the highest value in this single column table.